Welcome back of me here at the pool deck at the rec center in San Jose State, giving you guys a little bit of MLS news, although this video is kind of related to MLS, but it's also kind of related to US Open Cup, which today was announced that US Open Cup will go with a little bit of a different format. It's not really a new format, it's just more of a revised competition format. And I'm actually right now looking here on the US Soccer website. So basically it just says that it's going to be reconstructed into a new competition format for the 2020 Lamar Hunt US Open Cup, and some of the changes will include that Division 1 clubs, which is MLS Club, will actually be entering in the third round instead of in the fourth round. So what that means is there are going to be MLS Club that is going to be going into the third round instead of being in the fourth round, as it's been the case for the last couple of years. Now, it says that not all MLS Club is going to be going into the third round, and it says that there's going to be 11 clubs that is going to be going into the third round, and there's going to be 12 MLS club that is going to be going into the fourth round. And to determine which club is going to the third round, it's basically saying, well, actually they said that to determine who is going to be going to the fourth round, it's basically going to be all the teams that is currently in the CONCACAF Champions League, and also the next four best team in the league last season in both of the conference, that basically determine who exactly is going to go to the fourth round, and that all the other team is going to the third round. And I believe they even says which team is going to be going to the third round. Oh, here it is. It says team entering in the round of 32, which is the fourth round, is going to be Atlanta United, who is the defending US Open Cup champion, and also they're in CCL right now. So of course that's the reason why they are in the fourth round. Then you got DC United, LAFC, LA Galaxy, Minnesota United, New England Revolution, NYCFC, New York Red Bull, Philadelphia Union, Portland Timbers, Real Salt Lake, and the Seattle Sounders. That is going to be in the fourth round of the US Open Cup. Now, team that's going to be going to the third round is going to be the Chicago Fire, Colorado Rapids, Columbus Crew, FC Cincinnati, FC Dallas, Houston Dynamo, Inter Miami, Nashville SC, Orlando City, San Jose Earthquakes, and Sporting KC. So the two expansion team, Nashville and Miami, will actually going to be going into the third round. And one of the main reasons why the U.S. Soccer Federation want to kind of put MLS team in the third round is because this is something everybody's been asking for. Like, everybody been asking for these MLS team to go into a round early, so we can get these kind of David versus Goliath kind of matchup where you got these lower tier team playing against like an MLS team. And I've also have heard people want these kind of MLS team, when they face these lower league team, to play on the road. Although from what I'm seeing here in the announcement, it doesn't say exactly all these MLS team will have to go on the road when they play against those lower tier team. It's still going to be like a random drawing to decide which is going to be the matchup, and also who is going to be playing at home. And I understand why people want MLS team to play on the road, because imagine you have a lower league team to get a home game in the US Open Cup. That's going to be a game that's definitely going to attract more fans and probably pack the stadium more than if you have like an MLS team playing a low league team at an MLS stadium. I mean, you've seen for the past couple of years in these US Open Cup game in MLS Stadium of how empty these MLS Stadium is. Like, you even seen it with some of the match vlogs that I've done when the Quakes are in the US Open Cup, where Avaya Stadium is usually very empty whenever they play these US Open Cup game, unless if they get deeper into the US Open Cup. That's when it does start attracting more fans to go into these games. It also says here that the competition calendar will be actually expanded, and that the first round is going to be taking place between March 24th to the 25th, which is the earliest start in the US Open Cup modern era since 1995. The expanded tournament calendar will allow rounds to take place at least 2 weeks apart, providing additional time for home team to market and sell tickets, for visiting club to arrange travel earlier at a low cost. In 2019, only 1 week will separate the first and second round, as well as the round of 32 and 16 as it says. And then it also mentioned which club is going to be in the first round. It's going to be the 12 winners from the qualifying round of the US Open Club, plus Newtown Pride FC, who is the US Adult Soccer Association National Amateur Cup champions, that is going to be in the first round. And they're also going to be matched up with a couple of NPSL and USL League 2 kind of squad. They said the announcement is going to be in early January. That would determine the first round matchup. They even gave us a calendar, and by the way, the broadcast is still going to be the same. ESPN Plus is still going to broadcast all of the game. It's actually part of a 4-year deal that ESPN Plus has, which, you know, it's great the fact that these US Open Cup games are showing on ESPN Plus, and especially it gives some exposure to some of these NPSL team. I mean, I remember back in the first round when they were broadcasting those games, it was kind of surprising seeing these games on my TV or on my laptop that I, of course, stream ESPN Plus kind of game, and see those games take place at grounds I actually been there before. I mean, it was kind of a little bit strange, but at the same time, it's good the fact that these clubs are getting kind of exposure, and that people can, of course, know a little bit history about them, and that they can at least kind of show how decent that they are when they're in these cup competition. Now, in terms of the calendar itself, it says on January 22nd, that's when the first round pairing will be announced. The second round pairing will actually just a week after the first round will happen. And they said it's actually possible pairings that is announced. And I also see that I think in the second round there is going to be USL League 1 team and also some teams from NISA that is going to be entering into the second round. Is that correct? Yeah, that is correct. So USL League 1 and USL Championship and teams that is playing in the National Independent Soccer Association would be entering into the second round. So that, of course, is going to be the pairings that's going to take place on January 29th. As I mentioned, March 24th to the 25th is when the first round matchup is going to be, followed by the second round that's going to be happening on April 7th to April 9th. April 10th will be when the third round drawing will happen, and then the third round matchup will take place on the 21st and 23rd. The 24th is when they do the round of 32 or the fourth round of the US Open Cup, and then in May 19th to 20th, that's when the round of 32 will take place, followed by the round of 16 and the quarterfinal draw that is going to be happening on May 22nd. Now, they said that on June 10th, there is a possibility that they have the round of 16 on that day, but they also said that there is a possibility that they could push the round of 16 to June 23rd to the 24th, although they also said that this could also be a possibility of them doing the quarterfinal. And likewise, in July 14th and the 15th, that's when they were thinking of either to put the quarterfinal on this day or the semifinal, and then on August 11th and the 12th, they were putting whether or not if this is going to be the semifinal or the final day for the US Open Cup, and that they also are possibly putting the US Open Cup final on September 22nd to the 24th and doing those 3 days. Let's see what else I need to kind of talk about. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it that I need to kind of talk about in some of the changes. You know, it's not really a dramatic kind of change. I think the biggest change is that MLS team does enter around earlier, although, you know, I kind of wish MLS team does enter around earlier, but I feel like every single MLS team should be in the third round, and not just like 11 MLS team that is going to be entering into the third round in this year. I'm guessing maybe in the future, US Soccer might think about putting every single MLS team into the third round. And the other issue that I have with not every single team going into the third round is the fact that these teams will have to play an extra game this season, and they're going to have this extra game to potentially move on into the next round and potentially have a little bit of a harder road to try to get into the final of this competition. Whereas if you have teams that is kind of like going into the fourth round, and basically all these teams are kind of like, let's say all these teams are pretty much teams that kind of like in the NFL where you have a bye if you're the first and second seed, and all these 12 teams are basically kind of like that, and the 11 other team are teams that did not get first and second seed in the NFL and have to play on wild card kind of weekend. That's basically what this is kind of like. And I think from what I also know is that I know some people will also say, well, yeah, these team does have to play an extra game in this US Open Cup competition, but you know, these teams that is going to be going into the fourth round, most of them have to have an extra game too this season when they play against Liga MX's team in the League Cup. First of all, I still don't rate the League Cup, and I still think the League Cup is just a glorified kind of friendly competition and kind of like a money grab competition to, you know, trying to see the competition between MLS Club and Liga MX kind of club. And if you ask me which competition I rather win and which competition that I feel like teams definitely take more seriously between League Cup or the US Open Cup, it's got to be the US Open Cup. I mean, you know, people forget that the US Open Cup is one of the oldest soccer domestic competition in the world. It was founded all the way back in 1914. It's actually the oldest continuous soccer competition right now in the US, and you know, that kind of history. And also I know in the US Open Cup, if you win the competition, you get a automatic spot into the CONCACAF Champions League, whereas I think in the League Cup, if you win the League Cup, you don't get an automatic spot into the CONCACAF Champions League, and that you only get an automatic spot, I think, maybe in the Champions Cup. I'm not quite sure about that. So obviously there's more at stake if you go into the US Open Cup and win the whole thing than if you go into the League Cup and trying to win the whole thing. So, you know, there's that kind of argument in terms of it, and I think that's why I feel like, for me, if I have to choose which competition I want to see my team rather win, it has to be the US Open Cup because it has more history in it, and also you get a berth to go into the CONCACAF Champions League. But yeah, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this news, and what do you think of this new format that the US Soccer is trying to do with the US Open Cup? Obviously, it's still not perfect, and I know the other thing that they also didn't mention here is that, are they still going to stick with the geographical pairing when they do the draw? And what that means is basically you are going to be there's going to be like different kind of drawings between different region, and that, you know, when we see these past US Open Cup, a lot of people wondering why in the world are we always having the same matchup. Well, that's because we always go with kind of like a geographical region kind of draw, where, you know, each team of course pick the number that is in their region, and it's not until when we get into like the quarterfinal and then into the semifinal when they started to kind of draw teams that is kind of farther away than their region is. So, you know, I hope that maybe they might think about changing that in the future. Obviously, the only reason why US Soccer refused to not get rid of this model of just kind of doing geographical region draw is because of the travel issue. But, you know, heck with the travel issue. I'd rather see some new matchup in the US Open Cup. Like, I hear a lot of fans complain the fact that it's always Portland versus Seattle in the US Open Cup. And sure, it's exciting when we see it in the league, but to see it every single time in the US Open Cup, that kind of does start to feel very boring, and that, you know, it just feels like they need to kind of freshen up in terms of the matchup that we see in the fourth round or even in the third round of the US Open Cup. So yeah, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this? Do you think this is a much better format, and do you think there's still some improvement in terms of this format? But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.